It's just so frustrating, isn't it? It's just time and time again, and you think everything's fine, and someone else gets injured. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. And I hope you've had a really good week so far. I hope that your weekdays were indeed solid and that you're ready for a brand new weekend of action, of course, in the Premier League, and Arsenal back in action. We have to wait all the way through until Sunday. It's a rare occasion these days where Arsenal play on a Sunday, it feels like. We had so many Saturday games. It's almost nice to have potentially a Sunday game to look forward to. 2 o'clock kickoff, of course, on Sunday against Crystal Palace. So we'll update you with all the insights about what's happening this weekend shortly. But good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Good morning to Steve, to John, to Paul, to Roy. Good morning to Brad, Black Shine. Good morning to Mohammed and Olawale. We've got Claire and Matt G. We've got Tom and Paul. We've got plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat as well, including Pat and Martin, Paul, Runs of Cows, Yanis. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks for listening. If you could drop a like and subscribe and all that usual YouTube-y stuff, that would be indeed greatly appreciated. So go ahead and do that. It just takes but a second. And if you click that little join button next to the subscribe button, you can also join our TGT family as a member of the channel too. Right, let's jump, shall we, into today's Premier League action. There are plenty of games going on, with also plenty taking place tomorrow. Chelsea hosting Sunderland. Of course, I should mention that Leeds United kicked off the weekend with a 2-1 win over West Ham United last night. Still West Ham's plight continues. But Chelsea, yes, 3 o'clock today. No early kickoff in the Premier League. 3 o'clock kickoffs. Chelsea hosting Sunderland. Newcastle taking on Fulham. And then the late kickoff, or late afternoon kickoff, 5:30, is Manchester United against Brighton. And then the relevant one for Arsenal, 8 p.m. tonight, we see Brentford take on Liverpool. So that is the game, of course, that Arsenal fans will be most intrigued about. Tomorrow, Wolves host Burnley in a 2 o'clock kickoff, which is at the same time as Arsenal against Crystal Palace, and Aston Villa taking on Manchester City. Another very relevant game for Arsenal. And Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest. Then the 4:30 kickoff tomorrow is Everton against Tottenham. That's the final game of this current match week. And speaking ahead of the games this weekend, of course, I was at the press conference yesterday at the Shelbourne Realty Training Centre to hear from Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta, who discussed a number of different topics ahead of the game this weekend. In particular, the team news, which provided something of a surprise, actually. I don't think too many people had really noticed the injury that Gabriel Magalhaes suffered during the game against Atletico Madrid. He was replaced. Mosquera, of course, joined the fray to finish the game. And I think most people just thought he was being taken off as kind of an opportunity to give him his flowers, if you like, at the end of the match and for the fans to clap him. But he says not much. Obviously, Big Gabby had to leave the pitch with an issue. Obviously, apparently. And he hasn't been able to train yet. So let's see how he evolves in the next 24 hours, whether he's available or not for the weekend. So it seems that it's not too serious. I know there were some people spreading rumors and lies online about how serious it was. And, you know, if this is to be more of a serious one, people are just guessing at this point. But the fact that Arteta has said, let's see if he is able to play this weekend, is a good sign that this shouldn't be too much of a problem. And if I'm being very honest with you, I don't think we need to play Gabby. You know, we could play Mosquera, we could play Hincapie, we could play Luis Skelly and move Calafiori to left centre half if we wanted to. There is 3 different options we've got to replace Gabriel. You could argue 4 if you played Mosquera to the right and moved Saliba left. You've got different choices if we want to. There is so many options in this Arsenal team, and no one really should be too nervous considering the amount of money we've spent and the amount of depth that we've got in these defensive positions now. So, yes, any update on that, of course, as we get it, we'll bring it to you. It was also asked about some of the longer-term absences, such as Noni Madueke and Martin Odegaard, Havertz, Jesus. And he said they are all progressing really well. They are all starting to do certain activities. They are all super willing to be available as quick as possible. But at the moment, None of them are yet in contention in the next week or so. So over the next fortnight, we weren't expecting to see any of them. Maybe beyond that, there could be an opportunity. I bumped into Noni yesterday, and he was climbing some stairs very comfortably. Let's just say that. So hopefully he's on his way back to recovery swiftly, and will be on the pitch alongside Kai and Martin and the likes as well. Fingers crossed, indeed. An incredible stat, of course, being that Arsenal have conceded just 3 goals in the first 12 games. It's the least in Arsenal's entire history of the club. Is there a motivation, therefore, to create more history, maybe even break Chelsea's record? Asked by Dharmesh Sheth of Sky Sports. And Arteta said, yes, we want this kind of record, and we are getting a lot at the end, brings the silverware and the trophies that we want. But obviously, the more we can produce, I think, the closer that we're going to be able to achieve it, what we want to do. And that defensive record is very good, but we need to be consistent. It's only just the start of the season, and the aim is to continue improving things, which we can still do. A lot of them to even better. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely fair enough that they want to try and aim to break those records. You don't want them to play this sort of thing down. They're very proud of the record. They're very proud of what we're doing defensively, and we should be able to take that forward as well into the next game. He didn't necessarily want to initially discuss Eberechi Eze. Dharmesh did ask about Eze and kind of his first game against his former club, but Arteta kind of cut in and was like, it's a big game for us because last season here we dropped some points, and it's the 4th game in a row that we're going to play against opponents that we drop points against. And this season we've been able to beat them. So it's focusing on that. We know that Ebbs is going to be a very special match with the history and for what he did for Palace, but the focus is on the team, which I think is absolutely fair enough. Now, I think this is the most I've seen Arteta irritated by questions about set pieces. He's always been a little bit frosty when it comes to kind of talking about Arsenal's record, how they're scoring goals, the fact that there is a large percentage of Arsenal's goals that have come from set pieces. This is the first time sitting in that room that I've felt kind of a frostiness to the set piece questions in particular. Ian Abrahams of TalkSport asking the question around set pieces, and let me just find the exact question. It's 15 goals so far in the opening games. I know you're used to so many questions being asked about the manner in which the goals are scored, but with 2/3 of them coming from set pieces. No, sorry, this is from the Premier League. This question came in. With 2/3 of them coming from set pieces, are you concerned that it's only 5 from open play at this stage? And he said, no, because I don't see football like open play and set pieces. I see the game in a different way. And then Ian from TalkSport said, going on from that, a lot of people say that Arsenal score most of their goals from set pieces. They still can't stop you. And yet football seems to be going more to teams who want to be scoring goals from them. How have you done and worked with it? He just said, with work. And then there was a pause. And then he carried on and said, first of all, creating the culture, giving to that part of the game the importance that it has, understanding that, again, football is evolving and the opponents are behaving against us, that we have to maximize certain things that happen very frequently. So something that happens very frequently better has a lot of value to us. So trying to maximize that and be effective. He was then asked about what point did you say, though, that this is the time to hone in on the fact that this was going to be such a rich source of goals? And he said, 10 years ago. And again, paused. And Ian pushed him and said, explain. And he said, 10 years ago, I said, I think it has to be. I wasn't here, but 10 years ago, I said it's a massive thing to do that, of course, being with Manchester City. And also his playing days at Arsenal. And he said, I started to have a vision and tried to implement a method and tried to be surrounded by the best people to deliver that. Now, there was further questions on this a little bit later on in the press conference as well. Simon Collins said, can I just ask you about that when you said 10 years ago you saw the importance of set pieces? I think that would have been your last year as a player doing your badges, I assume. Is that because you saw where the game was going and you thought that it was going to be a key part of the year of football that we're in now? And he said, yes. And because I went to City with the best manager in the world and I could see where we could have improvements, it was clear because at some point I was doing that and I wasn't the best person in the world to do it. So if I'm not the best person in the world to do it and the best method to do it, there are ways to improve it. And you could see that straight afterwards when it started to happen. But it's not only obsessed with that. I'm the same with the defensive part. In every transition, I want to be the best when it comes to chaos. I want to be the best when it comes to position and attack. The best when it comes to low blocks. And that's the eagerness to constantly find ways to develop your team, to evolve your team, and to give your players more tools to be more unpredictable and especially more efficient. That's it. And again, I think it's telling, this idea that Arsenal and Arteta has seen things so long ago that he is now integrating into Arsenal's style philosophy now that are 10 years in the making, and wanting to be the best at absolutely everything, from the things that you can control within set pieces, within tracking back, within pressure, to things out of your control like the chaos. How much can you control the chaos? So yeah, I thought it was an interesting answer. And James Ollie as well from ESPN asked further questions towards the end of the press conference around this too. And he said, since you don't see the game in terms of just open play and set pieces, is a key part of it then the bit in between, the work that you do in open play to then create the openings? He said, and the other way around. Football is like this. Football doesn't stop. It's all connected. If you want to see the game like this, okay. I don't. Again, I said it was frosty at points. It was a little frosty, and I don't think it's frosty in terms of kind of personal to who was asking the questions at all. I think it's more of a generic thing, and it's just this idea that I think he thinks people just don't get it, and I think it's frustrating him that people don't get it. Arsenal are playing and getting goals from set pieces a lot this season. Now, from a personal perspective, I think that interesting answer there about getting goals from open play, or the open play leads to set pieces, and of course, as Arteta points out, vice versa. At the moment, Arsenal are doing some really good things. We are scoring goals from open play, but we're scoring the majority of our goals from set pieces. And the reason for that is that in previous seasons gone by, when we have faltered, fallen, been frustrated, haven't been able to beat opposition sides, and we've sat here together moaning, complaining, irritated by the fact that we've dropped points and not won and couldn't find a way to win. Well, Arsenal are finding a way to win. Our open play leads to set pieces at times, which sometimes we take. Our open play can lead to goals. Set pieces can lead to other phases of play, which then create open play scenarios as well. So I think he's frustrated because I think he thinks that people can't see what's going on. Can't see the bigger picture. Can't take in it all. Is that you just look at the numbers that suggest that Arsenal are scoring the majority of their goals from set pieces, and that leads to opinions like Arsenal are reliant on set pieces. Arsenal aren't reliant on set pieces. Not at all. There have been set pieces that have won Arsenal games, but the fact of the matter is that they've had to break them down and create those set piece opportunities from open play moments. To get a set piece, you've got to have a scenario where you've done actions from open play to get those scenarios that then lead to potential set piece threats. I think people maybe forget that element of the game. I think James was right to point that out in the question that he asked. It's very, very interesting, I think, this idea of Arsenal being so and so reliant on set pieces, because those set pieces are coming from open play. So, yeah, it is a bit... I empathise with Arteta's irritation to a degree on that. Other question that was quite good as well about Declan Rice that came from Simon was just that he came and said the kind of... the question was, since he came here, he has turned into probably one of the best set piece takers in the country. I mean, he's had comparisons to David Beckham. What would you say to that? And what do you think that says about his performance? And he said, again, I have some quotes that he made about that this season. His position has changed a little bit, and I disagree with that because his position has evolved. And he's becoming a total player. You might remember during the international break, Declan Rice said that his position had changed this season. Arteta's saying he disagrees with that assessment and that he feels that his position is evolving instead. He continues by saying a total player has to be able to do as many things as possible, and he has the capacity to do that. So that's to evolve a player, to start to bring something else to the team. And especially when you talk about scoring goals, he's letting the position evolve even better, and he's been instrumental in our improvement in that part of his game. And I think that's very fair indeed. And staying with the midfield, Harry Symeou asked the question about Martin Zubimendi, and I've always got time to hear about Martin Zubimendi, to which Arteta said, well, every player is different. We had some terrific midfielders here. He brings certain hierarchies, certain composure, and that is very difficult to understand. And then the way that he proceeds information and learns from the game and what is actually happening in the game at speed is remarkable. And I think, again, about him, it was to unlock certain spaces and find that capacity to look further and to hurt the opposition when his teammates are further from the ball than himself. And then, yeah, if he can add goals to it, even better. So Zubimendi is my number one player alongside Timber this season so far. They've both been utterly fantastic. Just before we go to part two in your questions, I'll be selfish and read you out the questions that I asked during the press conference. The first one was on, of course, you saw all of the big light shows at the Emirates Stadium on Tuesday night. In addition, if you were in the ground, you probably would have seen the screens within the concourse that was encouraging fans to get back to their seats and that they wouldn't be showing the game in the second half on the concourse. A lot of what has happened in the past is that people are happy to kind of stand on the concourse with a beer because they know that the screens will be showing the game. They have stopped doing that. And that is a good thing. Trust me, I have been such an advocate of trying to improve the atmosphere, encourage fans to stay in their seats longer, get in their seats quicker. And the reality is that Arsenal needed to do this. They had to stop showing the game from the screens in the second half, get bums on seats, encourage people to stay inside the ground because too many people don't. And it might be a tiny percentage, but that's still too many. And so I said to Arteta, we saw at the Emirates on Tuesday the light show and the integration of fans' phones. We also saw the messages at half-time before the game started to encourage as well the fans to get back into their seats as early as possible to create a supportive and intimidating atmosphere. How important is that element for you in potentially the type of race, the title race, and the impact that it can have on games? And he said key, capital. One of the most important things, and I love that because we don't expect supporters to turn up to the stadium. We want them we don't want them just to, can I do that? He said, we want them just to play the game with us, which is very different. In order to do that, you have to be in your seat with a certain behavior, with a certain body language. It's a good test Sunday at 2 p.m. how we're going to turn up after a big Champions League. If we're going to do another step and do something that we didn't do last year, everybody has to turn up to the stadium with that mindset. So that's what I want to see. And he's calling, to a degree, he's calling fans for more. The atmosphere on Tuesday, I had bad vibes at the start as the game was kind of building up. The Atleti fans are quite loud in the corner. The light show happened, which I have complaints about to a degree. The speakers need some work. If you're going to play drum and bass, you need better bass. But the reality is, if the frenetic nature of the game really got the fans in it. The fans lived that game with the players, and it really came through. The atmosphere was really good. One of the best atmospheres this season so far for me at the Emirates was that game on Tuesday night. And considering the PSG game at home last season in the league phase where we won 2-0, that was a pretty flat atmosphere for two really top teams playing one another. This, again, was that kind of similar scenario in terms of the context of the game, but the atmosphere was completely different. And he kind of is, is a call to arms, as Claire points out. You know, again, come to the Emirates on Sunday, be prepared to back your team, be prepared to live the game, play the game with your team. And that's what it is. I did want to ask one question about Eze during it, as I kind of alluded to on one of the shows this week. And I said, can I ask you what it's like playing against a former club, as Eberechi is going to do this weekend? You, of course, played against Everton when you moved to Arsenal. What challenges does that create for a player when they're playing former teammates and former friends so soon after they've moved? And he said, there is something in your tummy, obviously. There is history. There are a lot of emotions. There are very close relationships. In my opinion, once you step in there and you go with that mindset, you have even more will to win. Because as well, you made that decision here to be successful and to achieve something else in your career. I'm sure Ebbs is going to be ready for that. And, that is certainly what we expect from Eberechi on Sunday, is to him to be very much focused on getting the result that he needs and to be encouraged to do that as well. Right, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Right, this is indeed part 2 of today's show, where we're going to be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. Very much looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, obviously in reaction to some of what Arteta has said there as well, and also maybe some other topics leading into the game against Crystal Palace. Tomorrow morning, we'll have our preview show in the morning, so lineups, predictions, scorelines, things like that we'll be talking about tomorrow morning. So just bear that in mind, of course, as well. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you to the more than 700 of you. I know on a weekend it's always a little bit tougher to get up to watch a show live at 8 a.m., but I do appreciate it. And also, please remember, tomorrow in the UK, the clocks go back. So you've got to remember that. So it's an extra hour for you all in the UK in bed and anywhere else in the world where you are also having daylight savings. But elsewhere in the world, This show will be at 8 a.m. live UK time, but that may be an hour later if your clock has not changed. So do bear that in mind, people. Do bear that in mind. Carl says, what's happening with the Arsenal ladies? It's international break at the moment. Kate McCabe, I think, had absolutely fantastic 24 hours playing for Ireland. So, yes, it's the international break at the moment. I think she got a hat trick. Let me double check. Yeah, I think she did. Katie McCabe, hat trick for Ireland. So, the women's side, international break at the moment for them. So, hopefully, we'll more updates on the women's team when they return as well. But thank you for your comment. Kaft, let's scroll up in the chat a little bit more, shall we? Officers, well done for asking the question. Between me and you, what you told him to ask them about the atmosphere. Arsenal's atmosphere has always been something I think that he likes being asked about. He likes it. Look, I will say that at no point in any press conference have I been stopped from asking a question. If I want to ask a question, I'll ask a question. There's definitely discussions that go on kind of before between us and like what's going. I remember one of the talks we had yesterday was all about things are going so well. It's becoming quite difficult because there's like how many people in that room? Off the top of my head, there's probably about 20 people asking questions. And one of the things that we were talking about before the game was ultimately we're struggling a little bit because there is so much good. And when things aren't going as well and things are a bit more up and down, there's more things to discuss. There's more things to talk about. And it does become harder, I think, to think of kind of question marks that are going to get more from him. And I absolutely seek advice at times. I think, what's he going to respond to? What's he going to respond well to? What's he going to give you a good answer with as well? And my mindset was in my head, I had very much the question to ask about Eze. The other question, I was a lot more open to advice, suggestions about what Arteta might be good to talk to. Sometimes I go in there and I'm like, I have my two questions. I know what I'm asking. I'm not deviating from them. But sometimes I go into those press conferences with like one or sometimes even zero. And if I have zero questions ready in terms of kind of like what I really want to ask, sometimes I'll listen to the press conference and kind of hear some of his answers on other topics before kind of going and asking about other things, which has happened in the past. Not as often as usually having the pre-prepared ones as I would have. But yesterday I was a lot more open because, as I said, at the moment, the time is that you're winning every week. We're seeing pretty similar kind of games in a way where teams are sitting back, absorbing pressure, Arsenal breaking them down, scoring set pieces, creating stuff from open play. Obviously, Gyökeres has become a bit. I thought Eze was a bit of a kind of a topic yesterday that needed to be talked about a bit more. But yeah, that means that I want... Claire says, if you're open to suggestions, does that mean you want us to flood the chat with suggestions? I mean, I often take inspiration from our conversations about what I might ask Mikel. So I'm not going to flat out say, oh, what should I ask Arteta? I wouldn't do that. Nor do I ever listen to any DMs when they're like, can you ask Arteta about this? I don't respond too well when it's kind of like that. But in our discussions, in our conversations that we have over the course of the week, it definitely informs at times what I'm going to ask. Conversations I have with colleagues, conversations I have with staff members, like all these things will inform what I'm going to ask if I'm going to ask something. So yeah, but he gave a good answer about that, and I was very happy for it. Let's go to Lucas says, Tom, is Zubimendi the signing of the summer with Mosquera? I think it's one of those questions where we will find a lot more about that at the end of the season. We'll know what the signing of the season has been once we get to the end of the season. John says, I've never seen an attraction of the concourse. I like a cup of tea and a bagel or a pie with my wife sitting in the seat, always there to see the team start first and then the second half, of course, never leaving early. I think I've softened a little bit to the evening games where people leave early. I haven't at any other time. 2:00 kickoffs, 3:00 kickoffs, 5:30 kickoffs. If you're leaving early from a game in those kickoff times, I just have zero sympathy and feel like those seats would be better taken up by somebody willing to sit until the final whistle. Evening games, I've got more sympathy because I know that trains can be late. Trains can be difficult to catch, and it obviously is a big rush to get out of the stadium. But I stay behind at the Emirates a long, long time after the final whistle, doing the press conference, doing articles. I get out the stadium, get a tube, get a train home. So there are always trains home. as I say, I leave like well beyond an hour after full time. So I have more sympathy during the evening games, but again, I really struggle with people that leave early. Joe says we miss the Ashburton Army sometimes. I think we miss that kind of catalyst at times, but as I've said on record many times, I think the Ashburton Army need an entire revamp, a whole rebrand, a refresh, a reset, go again, find the idea, but do it from the start, because there's just been too many controversies, unfortunately, with the group. Paracetamol flavored ice cream says, pick one. Your job role stays as it is. Or two, you get promoted, double your salary, but you can never go to an Arsenal game again. I quit teaching, which I was earning more money from, to chase a dream of journalism because I want to do what makes me happy. This job makes me happy. Going to games makes me happy. Covering and talking about Arsenal makes me happy. Money to me is just so secondary. The biggest advice I give anyone is to recognize when you have enough. If you can get to a state in life where you feel like you've got enough, where you earn enough to support your family, to be able to have a social life and doing a job you enjoy while getting it, I just think that's enough. It's enough. I've got no ambitions to be a millionaire. I said to my missus the other day when she talking about kind of lottery tickets, it's a while ago, in fact, that, I've almost got zero desire to win a lottery. I would buy a ticket now and again. I'm like, cool. That'd be cool if we won it, sure. But I must be one of the fewest people in the world that are not fussed about like potentially winning the lottery, because it's just a case of like, you need to learn when you got enough. And I almost think that when you come into that level of money, almost like you probably end up changing as a person. And I'm not too interested in that. So yeah, I just think you've got to learn when you've got enough, really. And I'm very happy with what I do because I think I've got enough. I think I've got enough. So I'm very happy. Perry says, for Eze to click, should he play more on the left? I think many argued that he would play better playing through the middle. And he's going to get that opportunity. And again, I think we're going to see him in loads of positions this season. And I think we'll be able to get more evidence as to both areas of the field to see where he thrives a bit more. NSW says they all laughed at Arteta when he made the "come with your boots and shin pads" comment. I mean, they didn't all laugh. Some insecure people did, and some people laughed in kind of support and just in jest. To be fair as well. So I think absolutely it's the way forwards that we try and encourage fans to be as engrossed in the game, engaged in the game as possible. Knowledge says, my only question is what are your thoughts on what was shown at the Halo Championship Series? I'm more than happy with what they are doing, but multiplayer is a must. You can't only do the campaign. To my knowledge, mate, multiplayer is going to be a separate thing. They're doing like a separate standalone live service multiplayer platform, and then campaigns are going to be more separate. But I loved what I saw. I thought it was great. I think people have overreacted a lot online and just like being miserable. Halo fans in general are just so miserable. So miserable and love moaning about everything. Aussie Gooner says, have people been a bit too critical of Ebbs? 4 goals and assists so far. I don't think they've been too critical. I think that he's still integrating and learning, and he's had to play several different roles as well. And he's playing in a team that's going up against sides that play in a very different way to what he was used to at Palace as well. Armour Organa says, Tom, why is it pundits call out Gyökeres but never seem to call it out for Eze? I don't know. Maybe it's because Eze's English and Gyökeres is Swedish. Maybe because he's a striker. I don't know. Salahuddin says, Eze just joined. Why is there so much criticism? Again, I don't think there's loads of criticism. I think there's just question marks about his integration into the squad. Carl says, are the Arsenal fans putting pressure on players with all of the online pundits and YouTubers driving the narrative that we must win the Premier League this season? I don't think so, no, Carl. I think that that's very much well established already. I think the players, the manager, the club all recognise the need to win this season. Then there's a lot of pressure on this season. Arsenal weren't my favourites. Liverpool were still my favourites. They won the league. Then City, of course, with their pedigree and their players like Haaland. Arsenal were my third favourites, going into this season. But it doesn't mean that I still don't think they have to win it, because I think they do have to win it, really. You've invested a lot of money. You've finished second 3 times in a row. There is a pressure absolutely to win the league this season. There's no doubt about that. Claire says, I think Mikel can tell you put thought into the questions and he seems to enjoy answering. Thank you, Claire. That's very kind of you. Loga says, we all see that Berta has been fantastic, but what do you think he can possibly do to keep it going in January and next summer? I think it's going to be a lot around selling. I think Berta's next challenge is going to be about, can he get maximum value for players that leave? That's definitely going to be a huge aspect, I think, of what he can still achieve. You know, he's done excellently in the incomings. Now it's going to be looking at the outgoings. If Martinelli goes, can he get maximum money for him? It's those types of things that are going to be interesting. David says, how do we campaign the club to get the club to do safe standing? I'm the wrong person to ask, David. I'm not a big protest campaign person. So I don't know. Get in touch with the Arsenal Supporters Club and ask them, potentially. Trip says, is it just me that the audio and visuals are slightly out of sync? Someone said to me the other day that on another show that they watched that I was a guest on, that they were slightly out of sync. Now, maybe that's a StreamYard thing, because obviously we stream on StreamYard and then it streams to YouTube. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not 100% sure. So I think we've had things like that in the past and it's then worked itself out, but maybe it's a StreamYard thing rather than a YouTube thing. But I know that other people have had the same issue when streaming as well. So I don't really know what to do other than that. John says, I have ambitions to be a millionaire, Tom. I'll have yours if you win it. David says, I still, to this day, can't understand how people could have $1 billion and still be angry at the world, because they've chased it and then they've got to $1 billion and they still want more. It's very difficult, I think, you know, in that kind of mindset. You're always chasing something, you're always trying to get more, but there's how much money is in your bank has no limit, really. So you never have kind of that sense of achievement of getting there, because it's when you get to $1 billion, it's the next billion. It's like subscribers on YouTube. When you get to 10,000, you want 100,000. When you get 100,000, you want 500,000. When you get 500,000, you want $1 million. When you want $1 million, you want $1 billion. Like, it's just one of those things. So I think learning to when you've got enough and you've got a steady growth and you're happy, that's all that really matters. Omer says, have you ever considered a book about Arsenal or your journey as a journalist? I'm still too young for a book. When I get to like 60, that'd be more, you know, think about when Charles Watts wrote his book, you know. So when you get to an older age bracket, that's when you write a book. Duncan says, Tom, well done on your question regarding the crowd. You can see Arteta's body language change in his positive response. Thank you. Laughing Man says, here's to every game, a draw tonight and all teams losing 2 points. Fingers crossed. Kingley says, Tom, how many points do you think Arsenal will get in the next 5? 15. So I'm always going to say 15 because I'm hoping that we can win every single game. 100%. Tipsy says, zero concern with Eze. He's been very unlucky not to have either scored or assisted in every single game he's played. If those margins went the other way, we'd be saying he'd be signing of the season. Knowledge says, when I say about multiplayer in Halo, it's a must. I do mean for some people to come back to an alternative to the remade campaign, making it F2P doesn't. I mean, to be fair, you have to remember as well that, yeah, there was multiplayer with the first game, but it wasn't online. So I don't necessarily think it's the priority with that game, but it will be with the next one, definitely. John says, you look in HD and sync to me, Tom. Scary. Okay, so it seems to be other people, not just, maybe it's just one. Ozzy says, do you watch Charlton week in, week out? I don't watch Charlton week in, week out. No. If Arsenal aren't playing and Charlton are playing, I will tune in or go to a game with the missus and their family. But I don't for my sins. She'd wish I did, but no, I don't. That was a slick jab, Tom. He's not watching. He's not watching. I'm going to say, Tom, if the Kroenkes sold you the club and were told that you need to give up your job, would you? Yeah, because I own Arsenal. So I could be a journalist covering Arsenal if I owned Arsenal. Like that'd be like the most PR controversy. Imagine if you were the owner of the club and an Arsenal reporter. Like that just wouldn't make any sense. You'd be reporting on yourself. So yeah, of course you would leave your job if you owned Arsenal. You can't interview yourself. That's just not how it works. Jelly says, technical question, Tom. Why is the TalkSport intro so much louder? It's something I have zero control over. Like I have asked many times for the TalkSport audio thing to be turned up. I don't even add it on. So I don't input it. I don't edit it in. I'm really sorry. I have no control of it, and I've asked several times about it, but it doesn't seem like it's changed. So yeah, that's yeah. Sorry about that. I have no idea. I can put another message in, but I don't know if that'll change anything. Trip2 says, sorry, Tom, my message about sinking was not meant to be a criticism. I didn't think it was a criticism. I didn't take it as good. You've seen something, you've let me know. I didn't take it as one. I just said I don't think there's anything I can do about it. Lucas says, Tom, I just wanted to say I'm not always in live chat and watch on catch up all the time, and also to say thanks for all the news updates on the mighty Arsenal. Come on, you Gooners. Thank you, mate. And you're very welcome. John says, as a former teacher, how do you rate Arteta as an educator for us fans? I love him, says Sean. It's a different type of education. Like, it's very difficult, like to kind of compare across professions. I think clearly, if you look at the way Arsenal have progressed over the last 5 to 6 years, how they've risen as a club, they're far more competitive now. Clearly, as a coach, he's having a massive impact. The players that improve every single season at Arsenal is just it's nearly all players. We're seeing tangible improvement and growth and improvement in those players. I think also we get a little bit bogged down in the numbers. I was doing some comparison of Eze's numbers for Palace and then for Arsenal for a piece that's potentially in the Mirror today. And his shot creating actions per 90 have gone down. His shots per 90 have gone down. But I think that comes as a result of playing for Arsenal in the style of the opposition that we now play against. For Palace, he played against far more open sides. He was able to get more opportunities, more shots, more assists, more goals. For Arsenal, it's going to be more tricky. Same with Gyökeres. He's not going to score the same number of goals he scored for Sporting for us. That was never, ever, ever going to happen. So we look at kind of numbers and how they increase and go up. People just assume that those numbers will go up playing for Arsenal. That's not always the case, especially if you sign a player from another Premier League side that's playing perhaps more towards, the lower end of the bottom half and the top end of the the lower end of the top half and the top end of the bottom half, like those kind of middle 8 teams. You're going to see a difference, a massive difference in how they perform and what their numbers are when they come to Arsenal. They're not probably going to be as good either. John says, I went to a Charlton corporate box years ago. I was there for Van Persie's amazing goal. Great roast beef sandwich as well, but not as good as the Diamond Club at the Emirates. That's next level. Must be nice sitting in Diamond Club. Ali says, do you have to check your questions with Arsenal media or can you ask whatever you want? No, I've never had to say like... They'll absolutely. You might want to suggest like being like, I think I'm going to ask about this. Do you think he's might give a good response to it at times? You might seek kind of some clarity around a question, and obviously that they will ask what you're thinking about, but you don't have to tell them. You don't have to have your question vetted. There is never a case of like submitting questions early, but sometimes you might want to suggest that you're going to ask something around this a few days in advance so that Mikel's in some ways ready for it in a way, so he might give you a better answer. You might have time to kind of consider it, but you don't have to do that. It's very open. Like they're always very helpful. They're always very open to hearing about what you may or may not want to ask. But if you say, I've got a couple of ideas, but I don't want to tell you, or I haven't really thought about it yet, and I'll probably come up with it on the spot, and I'm going to listen to other answers. Again, that's absolutely fine. Like you never have to submit anything. You never have to check them. You can ask whatever you want, within reason, in the sense that we've talked about freedom of speech all the time. It's kind of a similar thing to that. Freedom of speech is not freedom from scrutiny about what you say. So same other thing. You can ask Arteta whatever you want. If you ask an insulting, disrespectful question, there may be consequences to you asking that. Now, I've never known anybody ever to get banned from Arsenal. Never in my entire time of covering Arsenal have I known anybody to get banned from an Arsenal press conference. I've known of other clubs having banned players. There's a big situation at Blackburn at the moment. If you've not done your research yet into that, go and give that a read. And Blackburn have stopped a certain publication, I think, from attending their press conference, like a local paper. So Arsenal, though, I've never known to have done that, nor have I ever had to submit any questions. I can choose to ask some advice sometimes. I can choose to maybe say, let Mikel know I might ask on this topic, so he's kind of prepared and I'm not sure, like blindsiding him with kind of a more of a left field question. But I don't often do that. I'll give kind of maybe some vague background sometimes, but Usually it's like, it's Crystal Palace. I'll probably ask about Eze. Something like that is what I'll say. But I've never had to have my questions vetted. No. Maximius says, Tom, any words on Ornstein's post saying our interest in Rodrigo may be reignited next year? Also, would you say that age before beauty in terms of Monsieur Watts when you meet him next time? Oh, it's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful man. So, yeah, in terms of the Rodrigo thing, I haven't seen actually David's post about that, but the Arsenal interest in Rodrigo was real, but like the transfer never really got to beyond too much of anything advanced. The player was always kind of like keen most to stay at Real Madrid, so it never really progressed, that move. Arthur says, do you know any journalists that Arsenal have banned for asking questions? Nope. Zero. Jelly Belly says, do you see Semenyo moving in January, and how likely are Arsenal to bid for him? Feel like he could be the missing piece to complete the first 11. I think that Semenyo is probably more of a summer deal, but maybe someone like Liverpool come in early and try and sign him, but I can't see it being an Arsenal move. Tom says, how often do you write in the Mirror? I really enjoy reading your pre-season paper that you told us about a while ago. Thanks, mate. Now and again, it's not like a set thing. It depends on how many people are at games. So if Crossy is there, John Cross is there, I won't be doing print because John will be doing print because he's our chief writer. If I'm on my own at a game like I was at Fulham, then I'll have some print stuff to do. So it depends on who is at the games. European away games at the moment, I'm on my own for all of them. So Prague and Bruges and Milan, I assume all three of them I'll probably be on my own. So there'll be some print stuff from that. So it depends on who else is there from the company, basically. But I'm like digital first with Football London. And then if I'm on my own at a game or a press conference, I'm on my own, then it'll be Football London and the Mirror print stuff. But sometimes, to be fair, and to say, I have prepped a piece for today's Mirror about Eze. I don't know if it's been used, but I need to buy the paper and check. But yeah, it's very random at the moment. There's not as much of a kind of established structure to it where I know like weeks in advance what I'm going to be doing at the moment. Raj says, how do they establish the question order? So usually what happens is like the main broadcasters will go first. So like Sky, because they've got the rights, will ask like 5-6 questions. Then it'll be the Premier League if they've got a person from the Premier League there. I think, is it Anita? I don't know her, so I'm sorry if I've got her name wrong. I think was there yesterday. And then TalkSport, so usually Moose is there from TalkSport or somebody else in his place. And then the BBC, Alex Howe will usually get kind of what's the words? Priority, that's the word I'm looking for. And then after that, it's a bit more of a free-for-all. So I'll have to like raise my hands, try and catch the press officer's kind of attention, and they will then come to you. So after the broadcasters have gone first, then it's a case of like raise your hand if you're a member of the press, and they will come to you to ask a question. So I usually put my hand up pretty soon after like the broadcasters have gone. So yeah. John says, how many of the Arsenal journalists at the press conference are actual Arsenal fans? Don't know. People don't tend to tell who they support. They keep it to themselves. Obviously, I think some of the Arsenal fans within that group because they're very open about it. But I would never reveal somebody's allegiance if they hadn't publicly done so, nor would I want to talk about it. It's theirs. It's personal to them. It's their choice whether they reveal it or not. It's very obvious to know that I'm an Arsenal fan that's there. I have been all my life. Yeah, look, I'd never reveal that information about somebody that didn't already had revealed it. It's not something I would do. Tom says, hi Tom, do you think Arsenal will focus on signing a left winger in the summer? It depends if one leaves. It depends if one goes. So I don't know if Arsenal will sign a left winger, because it will very much depend, I think, upon the futures of other players in the group. Americano says, Tom, I watched the show with Jordan. I wouldn't care if we won the league with all 1-0 wins. City weren't that brilliant in all of their league wins. No, neither would I. I disagree with Jordan. I think we talked about that at length. And for the record, like, I think we're the best community here, right? And I say that a lot. But my word, some of you can be a little bit sensitive. Like, he has a different point of view to me. Sometimes respect goes out the window. Some people wouldn't even use his name in their response. They'd be like, that guy, can't agree with him. His name's Jordan. Like, he was respectful throughout the entire conversation. Could people not even show respect back to him, even if they disagree with him? I was really disappointed at some of the response over he was. Like, if you want to disagree with somebody, great, but Jordan put his opinions across in a respectful way. So why can't a retort come back in a respectful way? It's yeah, it did grind my gears a little bit seeing some of the disrespect in the comment section a bit. Political Junkie says, of course he's frustrated. The talking heads commentating on what he should do have never been successful coaches. This is Arteta, of course. Many of them have never been good players. His thinking totally makes sense. I imagine it is always very frustrating to be kind of asked about things by people who clearly are not as qualified as you in that position. And so looking beyond that, and probably, I don't know this, of course, but if it was me, I'd probably walk away from those press conferences shaking my head like, why can't they see like what clearly I'm doing? And it must be very frustrating at times, but that's why it's up to him to kind of explain it as best he can as well. Pew says, actually, Tom, for me, I think that we should just get a bit greedy, bring Semenyo in January and then do PSG style. I don't think we need Semenyo unless we move somebody on, personally, yet. Until we move somebody on, I don't think that's needed. Floyd says, Tom, do you see there's a big number of journalists now creating their own YouTube channels these days? Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't they? They absolutely should. I always recommend it. I always give advice if anybody ever asks about it. You know, I've gone the other way around. I've done the whole YouTube content creation into journalism, like that way around, whereas other people, journalism first, now starting channels. Like, and why wouldn't they? Journalism is incredibly unstable career. You never know what's around the corner. I've survived somehow 4 redundancies periods at my company. Like, you never know what's going to happen next. So I absolutely can't blame people for looking after their own personal brand. You know, I absolutely don't begrudge anybody from doing that, and I'd actively encourage them to think about it. Umair says, love the show with Jordan. All respect to him, even if I disagree with his take on entertainment versus trophies. There you go. That's perfect. That's perfect. It's like, it's to get people going. I had someone leave a comment that was like, Tom, don't get Jordan on again. Like, you're going to lose subscribers if you keep getting Jordan on. No, I might lose you because you aren't able to accept another person's opinion that's different to your own, which I'm absolutely fine with. It's like when people try and speak for like a whole group of, like, for all subscribers when they're just talking about their own feelings. Like, it's mad to me. I think it's so much better to have differing points of view, to not lock yourself in an echo chamber. And I will always continue to have people on who have different views to me, because it's a good conversation. You learn more to be able to either reconsider your position or strengthen your position by being challenged on it. So this idea that you would only ever get people on with the same mindset as you, same perspective as you, because that's what you subscribe for. You subscribe to hear what I say, and I really appreciate that. But you don't have to watch every show either. Like, I do this show every single morning, and 99 times out of 100, I'm on my own, taking your questions, giving you my thoughts. And then now and again, we'll do a show with a guest, and you may agree with them, you may not, but you don't have to watch it. You don't have to listen to it, and you don't have to leave a mean-spirited comment afterwards. You could go, love the show, but, you know, I didn't really agree with this person on this point, and here's why. Or just not even comment at all. Also, it's one of those where it's like, I couldn't listen to this. Couldn't listen to this person. And you're like, well, clearly you did, because you've listened to it enough to then write a comment about it. Like, and why do you care so much to leave a comment saying, I couldn't listen to this? Cool. There's a lot of people I can't listen to. And do you know what? I tend to ignore them and go and listen to someone else. So it always maddens me when that stuff happens. John says, I love a good debate. It's the bedrock of democratic society. Kingsley says, I love the show with Jordan. It was very refreshing. Knowledge says, I always find Jordan entertaining with his takes. Snicker says, oh, wow, we're still going. I'm late to the part. How long have I been going for? Only 50 minutes. This isn't even a longer show than usual. Mayor says, is there a possibility you think of transitioning to working officially for Arsenal, writing for the club website and so on? I couldn't do that, because if you worked for Arsenal, I couldn't have my own. I couldn't do this if I worked for Arsenal, because I'm critical of Arsenal. It'd be like, imagine starting up a YouTube channel talking about what you do in your space, and then on your YouTube channel criticised your company. You couldn't stay with that company. You couldn't do that. You couldn't start your own YouTube channel and be critical of Arsenal. You just couldn't do it. So no, it's not something I think about working for Arsenal. It's not something I work adjacent to Arsenal, and I'm very grateful for the work I do adjacent to them, covering them, the access, of course, that is provided through the freedom of press. So no, I don't think so, because I value this channel, this ability to be able to speak freely. And it's people will go, yeah, you see, like you can't speak freely about it. Like Adrian, for instance, like Kurt says, Adrian Clark, he started up his own channel. He works for Arsenal and he analyzes the game. But I can't see, and I don't like to speak for other people, of course, and maybe Adrian will disagree with me, but I'm coming from my own personal point of view. Like, he's not going to sit and bash the club. Like, he works for them, So it's just different. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. So yeah. Like, one day in the future, way down the line, when I think I've got everything I can get, and I've kind of like, maybe YouTubers have moved beyond me. Maybe the fandom world has moved beyond me, and that YouTube is just no longer a thing. And I'm talking like decades. I don't know how long I'm going to do this for. It's a very crazy world. I thought I was going to be a teacher for the rest of my life, and I was a teacher for like 4 or 5 years, and then changed careers. So who knows what's in the future? But like, it's not to say that I would never ever do it, but I just can't see it. I can't see it, because I value this. This is what I love. And I think it should be fairly common sense to work out that I couldn't speak how I speak about Arsenal if I worked for Arsenal. So it should be, and that's fine. Manny says, you're never allowed to leave YouTube, Tom. Okay. Good to know. Good to know I'm trapped forever. Payas? Payas? I'll say Payas. By the way, Tom, to rectify the pronunciation of my name, it's Payas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'll try and do my best to pronounce it better in the future. Amaragonis says, Tom, I'd walk, win, feed, win, and pick wins. Mess up. Is the job going? That's how much I love my club. I don't know if that job's going, mate. This win doesn't do any of that, thankfully. Sits very quietly and loyally watching the show. Answers, I love how obvious Mikel's face changes when he doesn't like a question in the press conference. Yeah, I've been on the end of many of those face changes to be like, oh, what's he asking now? And he says, which other Arsenal fan channel do you like to watch if you do have time during the week to watch? I don't really listen to others or watch others a lot, to be honest, because as I said, I don't really have time. And it's not even to do with necessarily not having time all the time. It's that, and I mean this with all the love in the world to some of my very closest friends who produce some amazing content, but I just want to switch off from Arsenal a lot of the time. Like if I'm driving up to a press conference, sometimes I might put an Arsenal podcast on, particularly if I'm lacking inspiration, perhaps for a question. But most of the time, I'll put music on, or I'll listen to a politics podcast or something like that. But outside of work and outside of games and outside of this, I'm usually doing something very different to Arsenal, because I have so much Arsenal in my life that I have to switch it off. I taught geography, John, if you need to ask. Thank you, Jürgen. That's a very kind comment. Ike says, what do you feel about the different excuses Slot has given for Liverpool being losers this season? Unsurprising and pretty boring at the moment, to be honest. Raj says, I would love to see you on a fan debate on the overlap. It's a show I would never do, Raj. So any producers of the overlap watching, in this current iteration of the program, I would never, ever, 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 ever go on that show. Just never go on it, because I just feel like I just feel like you're there to get clipped up for an opinion, or you're there to be asked a controversial question that's designed to get a specific answer. I have no interest in that. Absolutely no interest. Zero interest in that whatsoever. if I'm ever in a situation where I sense that I'm being asked a question that's kind of lead me down a certain path, I'm usually pretty resistant to it anyway. I don't think I'm good television for that. I don't think that's if that's what you want from me, you're not going to get a very good clip. I don't think. And Lucas's Adrian's analysis is awesome to watch, and that's what I mean. Adrian's analysis is great, and that's what he's about. That's his niche. That's what he thrives at, and I think he does it really, really well. But he's not going to hop on a debate about. He's not going to go and slam Arteta. I just can't see it happening. They might prove me wrong. I just can't see it. Art says, can you tell us every time that you'll be appearing on TalkSport? I haven't been on TalkSport in a little while. As I say, I'm usually pretty busy. So, what was the last time I did a show? I did the thing at the start of the season. I really enjoy jumping on Sirius XFM when they ask me on. It's always an absolute joy. Obviously, it's an American radio station. Grumpy Pundits is the program, but they often ask me on, and I always have a lovely conversation with those guys. So it's always a pleasure. And he says, you and Curtis Shaw must do a show together. A lot of you always ask about Curtis, and I have told you several times that I have asked Curtis before to come on the show, and he's never showed any interest. So I don't know what else I have to say on that. But yeah. And the only reason I asked is because someone left a comment on his live stream once where about what I said. I don't think they fairly represented what I said, but he responded to it. And I was like, look, let's have a conversation, but never got back. But even though he said, we'd have a conversation. So I was like, I hear these, you're up for it. Let's do it. But it never happened. Lucas says, I watched the Fulham game while night fishing. How committed I am to watching the game. Nice one. Kimmy says, what place would you like to travel in the world? As much of Italy as possible. Pretty much. And as much as Spain as possible. Spain and Italy are like my two favorite places in the world, two favorite cuisines in the world. So as much of Spain and Italy as feasible. I'm pretty European, I'm not as keen on going to Asia and South America and places like that. I'm sure I would love them, but I've never been, and it's just not something I've done. Japan is something Japan's kind of the anomaly of that, I guess, because I would like to go to Japan and just experience that. But other than that, I kind of just love Europe and the different countries that Arsenal travel to in the Champions League. It's always an absolute privilege. Ali says, have you ever driven to a press conference without a question in hand, like writer's block? Yeah, yes. As I said before, loads of times. Just usually I'll listen to the presser, and an answer from Arteta will inspire me. But thankfully, I always tend to come up with something. And John says, Slot is moaning about teams chain ring the way opposition teams are playing against Liverpool. Yeah, of course it's all he's got left. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time and listenership as usual. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early on the day of the game, to do a little mini preview ahead of the match against Crystal Palace on Sunday. Enjoy your Saturday. I hope it's good. I hope it's well. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to be meeting up with some American Arsenal fans later on today. Looking forward to that. And it should be a lot of fun. So I'll report back tomorrow morning. No, I'm not going to be drinking a lot because working tomorrow. But enjoy yourselves. Have a fantastic Saturday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.